Hi friends, how's it going? Welcome back to the show, The Other Side of Now. We've got Linda and Cheryl with us today, and we are just so excited to talk to you today about a very, I would say, relevant subject matter for all of us, especially as women. And today we're going to be talking about body image and self-love, and we're actually going to be sharing some stories that have played huge roles in our personal development and awakenings and journeys when it comes to ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. So I know this was something that we're all very passionate about. And we want to thank you for continuing to tune into our show, the love and, the way you guys keep connecting in with us. We're so grateful. So for those of you that are just joining us, make sure you check our website out. It's theothersideofnowshow.com. And then we're also on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and you can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. So all of these fun ways to tune in. So with that, today I'm actually going to kick things off with sharing a story about a beauty pageant I did in college. And I know Cheryl and Linda, when we were talking about this, it was like we were all kind of having these like wow moments for ourselves when it comes to our insecurities and just like the different pieces of like our development. Yeah. So with that, in college, I competed in the Miss Pennsylvania USA pageant. So I had dabbled in pageants since I was a young girl, and dance competitions were huge for me. And the dance competitions, I felt like really I benefited from in tremendous ways. It was different from the energy of a beauty pageant. But I did have experience in beauty pageants, and it was never successful for me. But in college, I was convinced by some people around me. I was working at a news station, and there were some women there and some family and friends that were like, this could be a huge opportunity for you. If you win Miss USA or Miss Pennsylvania, it opens the door for all of these different opportunities. And at the time, I was pursuing broadcasting. So I thought in my mind, you're right, this is my ticket. Well, the thing was with the pageant, I had to lose about 20 pounds. Now, mind you, at the time I was very healthy and in shape. I'm almost 5'8". I was in college dancing all the time. I was in great shape. So to lose 20 pounds was not going to be simple. But I'm like, okay, the pageant is everything. Like, I need to do this. This will define me as worthy of being beautiful and accepted in this community. So in order to lose the 20 pounds, I had to do it in a very unnatural way, which nobody knew about. My mom didn't know about. My friends didn't know about. I was taking diet pills. I was eating very little. I was basically starving myself to lose this weight. And I ended up losing it and getting down to a size 4, which for me at 5'8" and an athletic build, I've always been like 140 to 150. Like a size 4 is not what my body is naturally designed to exist at. We spent thousands of dollars on a pageant coach and invested all of this time and money into this dream, right? Sandy's going to win this beauty pageant. And at the time, I was teaching full time, and I had like hundreds of students that knew I was doing this. And about 50 of them and their parents came to the pageant to support me. So this was like 6 months of training to chase this dream. Ready for the pageant, got my dress, swimsuit, the right heels. I have a personal makeup person, a personal hair person, like the coach, the this, the that, everything all lined up. Just like when you see those pageant shows on television. So we go through prelims, all of that stuff. Nailed the interview. I've always felt confident conversing. Broadcast journalism was always my thing. But I knew the piece was going to be swimsuit competition. If I could get through swimsuit competition, then I'd have a chance at this, which again is why I had to lose all of the weight. So to fast forward, go through semifinals, go to the second day of the competition when they announce the top 20 to proceed on. I had over 50 people in the audience. I was not even called into semifinals. And the whole weekend, there was all of this hype that, you know, in the pageant world, there's like these like people and stuff that make predictions or whatever. And there was all of this hype. Sandra's a top contender. Sandra's a top contender. And I latched onto that. Like, I'm a top contender. Like, I'm finally going to prove that I'm pretty enough, that I'm worthy enough of a title. And they called the top 20. And I remember being on stage counting. I was like counting on my fingers, all of the names. And it was like, we'd get to 10 and I didn't hear my name. And then 15 and I didn't hear my name. And then all of a sudden it was just like, it felt like the whole world was caving in on me. And then when they said like on our final finalist and they never said my name, it literally felt like if this was a glass of water and my life was in this glass of water, you just turned the whole thing upside down. Mm-hmm. And so I remember walking off stage in a fog, like, what just happened? I did everything right? Like I lost the weight. I hired the coach. I learned how to stand perfectly and like all of those things. I did everything right. Like, what happened? And then part 2 to that was complete embarrassment because I had all of these people in the audience expecting me to win or at least to proceed. And it was just like nothing. So that experience, to say that experience was traumatizing, just scratches the surface of what it did to me for a while. And then after the pageant, everyone wanted to take pictures and still celebrate me. And, you know, I had all these little girls that were like, Miss Sandy, you're so beautiful. We love you no matter what. And now I'm carrying the pressure of like not crying and not being upset in front of all of these little impressionable minds. So I'm just like, thank you so much for being here. Mask, right? Total mask. And right. I remember when everyone left and I went back to my hotel room, I just lost it. And it's so funny. It's making me emotional now. It's like I wanted so bad for the world to define my beauty because I couldn't define it for myself. And to put all of my worth outside of myself in the hands of 5 people that knew nothing about me, that, you know, didn't choose me to the criteria, right? Like I didn't meet the criteria of beauty. The number that did on my psyche for a long time, it was so destructive. And as I share this, I'm not knocking pageants or people that pursue that. I think there are many beautiful things that come from competition and, you know, stepping into a zone to pursue something. Like I'm not degrading the pageant community at all. I'm just saying for me, that was a wound that took years to overcome. And I remember, I think it was one of my coaches, my pageant coaches, saying months later, you know, maybe if you got a nose job, that would have helped. And what's crazy is I've had 2 nose jobs. And being in college at the time, my professors who were television people were saying the same thing. Like, you know, you'll probably do better. Cause I had the Arabic, I had this like hump, right? We call it like the camel hump. And of course, growing up, I always got teased in school from my nose. You guys remember the honkers on Sesame Street? Those like puppets with the big noses like this, and they would press their noses and they would make like honking sounds. Like that's like what the kids would tease me about. So it was crazy because even after the pageant, there was still like, well, if you did this, like you could try it again. Like you should try it again, but just do this. So it was just really toxic.
So how long did it take you? I mean, because I think what you share is so relevant in so many ways. I mean, you don't have to take it to a beauty contest. You
Right.
take any middle school, high school, elementary school, for heaven's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And, all kids are dealing with this. And so when you said it took me years, what was it that finally made you take that experience that can still hold pain for
Mm-hmm.
you, but turn it into something that's different, that really empowered you in a different way?
Thank you. Yeah, it took a lot of learning how to go in and stop comparing myself to, at the time, magazines, right? Because social media, I'm not that old, but social media still wasn't what it is now. And so it was like what the definition of beauty is on TV or in the magazines. And even growing up in the school district that I grew up in, it was primarily what I would say like all American looking kids. So blonde hair, blue eyes, like very traditional looking kids. So for myself and some of the Indian girls or the handful of minority girls that were at school, we looked very different. And there was even wounds growing up from not feeling popular with the boys or not feeling desired because I just looked so different. So all of that was underneath, building up to trying to pursue this thing that truly really wasn't for me. So to answer your question, it took a long time, Cheryl. It took a long time. And there were years where I would not leave the house without makeup on, no matter what I was doing, even if I was going to the grocery store. Now I'm really into natural nails, but for years I had these, long acrylic, and it was like everything that I thought outside of myself is what would make you beautiful. Those were the things I was chasing.
Yeah.
And I have to say that when I met Richard, I was 25. He actually helped me in tremendous ways to see myself. He was the first man that started saying to me, why do you always wear makeup? Like, you're beautiful without makeup. And I was 25 years old before a man said to me, you're beautiful without makeup. So I don't want to put all of the power in, him, but I do need to acknowledge that hearing from a man, you're beautiful without makeup, was a game changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting, like with all of this, it gets down to our self-esteem, what we think about
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And so, over these past shows, we've talked about rewriting these words, the energy behind these words. Self-esteem is another one of those words that I feel strongly about, that it's time that we look at it and we do rewrite it, because for all of us, and I know we'll get into some of our stories too, but for all of us, we're not born as babies with insecurities, right?
No.
So somewhere along the line, we observe, we get conditioned, and so self-esteem is about self. But what you've so beautifully shared is that, right? What do? We put all the power outside of ourselves.
Yep.
We need to look like this person. And not only do we need to look like that person, now we need that person to judge us, to tell us if we're meeting the standards. And so none of it is about self-esteem, about self.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, when you said after all those years, you got back to looking inside of you, I think that's our new definition of self-esteem, is that can't we just start building it on a platform of self-love and looking and having those conversations of how we can look at ourselves in the mirror and start to be kind and loving and saying nice words versus like, oh my God, you look like you didn't sleep all night, Cheryl,
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about self-love, and we've brought this up on many of our episodes, it's like, what is self-love and how do you learn self-love? And what's so beautiful about the time that we're in now is I feel like we're very progressive now with these types of things. And there's so many people speaking out about it. But at 20, 21 years old doing that pageant, And the definition of beauty at the time being this all-American, people have to remember, like, now ethnic is in, and, you have all of this, like, Hispanic and Middle Eastern and like all of these different, and even I love how African-American women are finally being seen for how beautiful they are and how brilliant they are, and, all of the natural aspects of what it is to be an ethnic woman. But when I was 20 years old, that was not the trend, or that was not acceptable. It was still kind of this like old way of seeing beauty.
Right. I know for myself, like you talk about being with the ethnicity,
Mm-hmm.
I was tall, and growing up, I grew up way back in the days where being tall was not in. No one was tall, but guys were tall. And so I was
And how tall are you, Cheryl?
5'10".
Yeah.
And so back then, my words were the Jolly Green Giant, or like, oh, what's the weather like up there? Things of that sort. And so, it's easy to say, oh, but you're lucky you're tall. Back then, it was a reality to me. It was challenging. And so I would go around with the stoop shoulders, where people were always saying, stand up straight, and drawing more attention to it, which I would hate. But you know what I have to say, for me, my height didn't stop me. It didn't consume me, but I think it did limit me. So there are all different ways that way our self-esteem affect us growing up. And I know when I say it limited me, I remember just feeling very insecure. Instead of just being me and jumping in and having that conversation, I would think, oh, wait a minute, she's so cute. She's short. She's cute. She's like a little cheerleader. Everyone's going to like her, right? Well, Linda, like there you are.
Because I am so short. I mean, like I was 5'4" at one time. Heaven knows where I am now, right? You don't even know. But mine was kind of the opposite. I was a chubby kid. And even my dad, who I love, he wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. He said, you're pleasantly plump. Oh. Like, what was that supposed to be? So I grew up like feeling like, and you see the pictures now. My brother just turned 60. And we went through a lot of his pictures from when we were little. I was a chubby kid, and it kind of lasted until I was like maybe in 5th grade. And then when I was in 5th grade, much thinner, but my weight has always been a struggle for me, and being short doesn't help. And I didn't eat because I was depressed. I ate because I liked all the taste of all this stuff. And like, I tried everything and I didn't worry about my weight. And when I was younger, I really didn't think about it as much until people started to make comments. Like when I got closer to my teenage years, like, oh, well, you have, and I'm not saying this because I don't think this, but they would say stuff like, oh, you have such a pretty face. You really should lose X, Y, and Z amount of weight. So it kind of came to a head when I was a senior in high school that I got the lead in the high school play. And that was really for singing, I think. I don't think it had to do with anything else. But they did make a comment like, it really would be better if you lost so much weight. So I did, but unfortunately, I don't know how to do that. And I didn't do it correctly. So my brothers were in wrestling. And with wrestling, they have to make weight, and they would do disgusting things like spit and throw up and blah, 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 blah. And that's how I learned a bad habit, where then it took off, where then I didn't even know it had a name then. It became like bulimia. And so that's how I controlled my weight during that time. I would not eat all day and come home and have a peanut butter jelly sandwich. So I knew it was going to last in my body for a few minutes. It is disgusting that that is the truth, but it is the truth. Unfortunately, that's what I did for those months. But I am a person who holds weight in my thighs and my behind kind of thing. And so I had this costume to wear. I was Daisy May in this thing called Little Abner, and she used to wear a short costume. I cut it too short. So the last thing I wanted to see is my thighs showing more. So luckily I had a great friend. She added like a little border to it and stuff. But before they added that little strip to it, there were pictures all over the school with the shorter one, right? And so I had to like bear that. I was mortified. And so, during that time, I really like just, like that became very important to me, that number on a scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that number on a scale thing lasted for such a long time. But I will say this. I always say the gift of when I had breast cancer. One of the gifts of my breast cancer is that when you have a spiritual awakening,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff doesn't have the same hold on you as it did before.
Yeah.
I really believe that was one of the true gifts of that, in addition to other things, that I kind of look at what I eat now as, okay, if I eat sugar, then because of the chemo, like I have all this arthritis and tendonitis and all that stuff. Well, if I eat sugar, then my knees will burn all night long and I can't sleep. So it became more of a health issue.
Mm-hmm.
That if, I became more active walking, and it wasn't for my weight as much as it was for me to keep on being able to move. It did shift, but it took a long time to do this. And I think about like when I was a kid, like when I was real little, like it was like that Marilyn Monroe shapely kind of thing. I'm a curvy girl. And then when I was about maybe 14, there was my nemesis, Cheryl's friend, Twiggy, that came into being. And I'm never going to be a Twiggy. Never. I'm not built like that. And I go back to what you had said, Sandy, a couple episodes about, that Richard said, God doesn't make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
right? God doesn't make mistakes. So all of us have different body types that we are naturally geared to. All of us are tall, short. Some of us have certain colors of hair, certain colors of skin, eye color. Some of us have better hair, like, if God doesn't make mistakes, and I shouldn't say better hair, because everybody has different types of hair.
Right.
And this is beautiful, and then this is beautiful. So what created this image of that certain person that wears these clothes, and they have to have this kind of body type, this kind of hair, this kind of skin type?
Mm-hmm.
Who said that?
I know.
Who said that? And why do we listen to that?
I know.
Why? That if I could say one thing, I would have had years of getting rid of a lot of angst if those images weren't there, and that you had to be X, Y, and Z,
Right.
to be blank enough, to be, like skinny enough, have hair, better hair enough, to
Right.
be smart enough, to have whatever it is enough. I was bald for a while, when I, went through chemo, and it
Mm-hmm.
came back curly and unmanageable, and it takes me hours to do my hair. But I have hair. But like, what if, like there are women that lose their hair, like at times, and so they shave it, or there's men, of course, that go bald earlier. What's to say that that's not still beautiful?
I know.
Who says that these are not beautiful, and why do we buy into it? That's what I want to know.
And this goes back to Cheryl's original question on like how I got over this, and it's still this will be a forever journey, self-confident. And I'm more confident now than I've ever been, but even being pregnant, I'm gaining weight because of the baby. And I have to remind myself it's for the health of the baby. It's like a crazy thing with your psyche.
Right.
But Linda, I had to stop reading the magazines, watching the reality TV shows. I literally had to detox. And now I would say, especially to our young people, social media, there are apps on your phone. One of them is called Facetune. You can download it and change the entire complexity of your face and your body. You can be skinnier, you can be wider, you can have no wrinkles. I could take pictures of all of us right now and us be completely wrinkle-free, and whatever discrepancy there is on this side or this side, I could fix it all and post it and convince our viewers that that's what we actually look like.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's what's out there. I mean, this is the society that everything is to be fixed. We can't celebrate anything that looks like a little bit different. But you know what? I go back to this thought. So how we're all raised, or how you're going to raise Mantis.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is when they say we can't control everyone else, we can only control ourselves. But when we start off making fun of ourselves and having that energy out there, oh my gosh, and our kids hear that, my hair looks awful today, oh my gosh, don't look at me. We're teaching them that that's how people act. And so we're not being that really strong, loving role models ourselves.
You're right.
And so
you're absolutely right.
It needs to start with us actually showing them, like, oh gosh, you know what, my hair during, now I need to curl my hair because it looks a little bit nicer. Something that is better than, oh my gosh, my hair looks terrible during this coronavirus stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good place to start, at least for people to hear that, because our kids we've all been taught by example.
Mm-hmm. And with that, I know I'm very aware of what I say in front of my nieces and nephews. I also know that I need to be equally as aware of when I'm by myself, because it's the self-destructiveness of that internal dialogue that continues to create it supports the insecurities. I remember a couple years ago, I was dealing with weight fluctuation, and it was very frustrating because I was eating healthy and I was exercising, but my stress level was holding everything. And it was not until I changed my mentality when I looked in the mirror that I started to drop the weight again. And I literally would have to look in the mirror and say, thank you, body, for supporting me through this time. Thank you for staying healthy. And I know these things may sound crazy to people, but it literally, my weight did not shift for 6 months until I turned off the negative, gosh, Sandy, why isn't anything changing? To, you know what, body, thank you. Thank you for this time. And, I'm grateful that we're healthy. And I just started easing up. And then the shifts started happening. And so it makes me think about, and Linda, we've talked about this with the water. Kim and I talked about it in our interview, about how the Dr. Emoto did this experiment with water and
just from the water,
and how it we're made of water, and water absorbs frequency and vibration. So whatever we're saying to ourselves is literally manifesting in our bodies on a regular basis.
Right.
People have no problem when you talk to your plants, right? And you say all these wonderful things to your plants, and your plants grow. Why do they think it only happens with plants? It happens with us too. And building on what Cheryl said, when I was younger, I wish I knew what I knew now, because I have 2 daughters. Not a good example whenever you're a person that, even when I was pregnant, I would get so nervous about watching the scale change. And truthfully, it took a while to have a doctor that I love that says, look, how are you feeling? That's more important than the number that's on there, right? All the other things, your blood pressure is good, your cholesterol levels are going to, all of that is more important than seeing the number on the scale. And I wish that I had that direction beforehand, but being kinder to our bodies and saying, like Cheryl was with me, maybe 2 years ago when we went to an orthopedic surgeon because they thought I had bone cancer. So here I yell about my thighs and stuff. I'm lucky I have these. I did not have bone cancer. That was another doctor had said that that's what they thought it was, and it was not. And how lucky am I that that's not where it went to? So really, we have to kind of step back and be happy for that we're here, we're healthy. Maybe, like I'm a little bit more, fluffy in certain areas that I want to be, but it doesn't really matter. In the long run, it doesn't matter. And what is in today will be in another time and not in. Like I see people, like I struggle with my behind. I see people like having liposuction, not liposuction, whatever it is, to put more stuff in that area. Like, what is that? You know, I could give them stuff for that. But
I know.
truthfully, like, who says that this is not beautiful?
We're
Who
taking
says
our power
it's not
back,
beautiful?
right? Bringing it back to ourselves. Yeah.
Bring it back to ourselves. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I was just going to piggyback on the power of our positive words. You know, you used that example with the water, but I mean, that's just energy 101, and understanding that the words we put out is what we manifest. It's what goes out. So if we're really saying like, oh my gosh, I'm just too overweight and stuff like that, that energy that's what you're going to continue to receive and come back. And so by using those loving words, that's great. I know when I was in the school system, first day of class each year with my kids, what I would do is I would put the word perfect on the board, and I would ask them what that word meant to them. All right. And so these were the younger kids, and it would all mean an energy of something that they were trying to be outside of themselves. They always had that cute girl, that boy, that whatever, that defined being perfect. It had never anything to do with themselves. And so I always started the year putting an X right through that word perfect and telling them it is Mrs. Segezzi's least favorite word in the world, and explaining to them how they were, just how they were.
Because who are any of us to determine what perfect is? It doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. And I really want women and men to understand that perfect is not real.
Right.
And for me, I have a scale now because I'm pregnant, and I got, I'm still working through like making sure I'm being healthy for the baby and all of that stuff. But until I got pregnant, for the last 4 years, I threw away my scale and I said, I'm not going to be concerned with weight or size anymore. It's going to be, do I feel comfortable where I'm at? And if I feel healthy and I feel confident, it doesn't matter what my jean size or my dress size is. It doesn't matter what the scale says. I just want to be healthy first. Like what you were saying, Linda, is like, and you can be healthy at every size, and you can be unhealthy at a very small size.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really, that health piece is so important. It's so important.
How many people, like, okay, weddings, right? You know, like you got married, you know, in a few years ago. We've recently had our children that have gotten married, you know, trying to get into the dress that I'm going to wear as mother of the bride. What I should have done is had the dress made for me rather than me having to fit into the dress, right? Instead of like, okay, this dress would look good if, you know, like, and just worry about that. It just seems so crazy. And really, I have to say, one thing that happened too when after this, you know, spiritual transformation, like 19 years ago, what really matters to me is the inside rather than the outside. There's a lot of beautiful people who aren't really kind and in the inside of them. So I'm hoping the listeners, if you haven't seen it, maybe see if you can rent this movie, Shallow Hal. And it's all about something that I totally believe, that that the main character, the man, was given the gift of seeing people for who they really are. So there was a woman that he fell in love with, happened to be the beautiful Gwyneth Paltrow, but she was probably like over 300 pounds in the movie, but he didn't see that. He saw her inner beauty. To him, she was the most beautiful person in the world, because this is a girl that had gone to the Peace Corps. She was kind to all these people. She did volunteer jobs. He saw that goodness and beauty within her, and that's all he saw. And then he had gone with another person where there was a woman on the outside that traditionally we would say, oh my gosh, she's so gorgeous. He saw her true nature, and he saw her as like a hag, because on the inside, she wasn't this kind, sweet, loving person. She was all about herself and selfishness and manipulative and all those ugly qualities. And it was a beautiful thing that he got to see people who they really are. And wouldn't this be great if we all see through the cover, because we all have this cover around us and it just happens to be what people get to see, but what's on the inside is really what's of value.
Absolutely.
The value is right, because, oh my gosh, I love that. I know as we talk about wanting to be like everybody, what we end up losing and what we try to really instill in our kids and our grandchildren and our nieces and nephews is the beauty of the uniqueness of who they are.
Yeah.
So that word unique, that is so beautiful, is really lost because no one growing up wants to be unique, right? Everyone wants to look like everyone else.
I just had this image, this may sound really silly, of a box of crayons.
Yeah.
Who wants a box of crayons that's all the same color?
Right.
There you go.
You could never paint or color a beautiful coloring book without, I know that sounds really silly, but as you said that, it's like this image of like a box of crayons popped into my head that are all the same color.
It's true.
Right.
It's true.
So here's what I'm wondering.
Okay.
As we kind of bring this all, to a point, what if we started as women being more supportive of each other and being less judgmental of each other and really started seeing each other as the flawless goddess beings that we each are? Right. What if that is a starting point that shifts things?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that people being able to live without the fear of judgment, of judgment of how I look, how my hair looks, how my makeup looks, how the outside of me looks. Right. But instead, every day kind of getting up and kind of, because we do all these prayers and meditations, but starting our day with, how can I make a difference today in a positive way? Right. That's really where our energy needs to be. It doesn't matter like whatever outfit I'm wearing. God knows right now I'm wearing more, like I have more like sweatpants than I've ever had in my life. I mean,
and doesn't it feel great though? Like it feels good.
Very forgiving right now, which I kind of like. But anyway, but getting up in the morning and what can I do that is going to be helpful? And Cheryl and I talk about it more than Cheryl, because I say TikTok. I feel like I am this age now. I turned just 67, right? So how many years do I have to make a difference, right? So how am I going to use every day to make it like a better place? And I don't think my better place is to see if, I can fit into this outfit or whatever. Cheryl and I talk all the time. I just want to be like healthy. And like when I'm around my peers, I want to look like people that are my peers. I don't have to look like somebody that's 30, for goodness sakes. Right. I have no interest, God bless you if you want to do it, but I have no interest in spending money on getting anything done to any part of my body. I'd rather spend the money on other things, right? Mm-hmm. But I earned these different like wrinkles on my face. Like this one was from this time. This one was from this time, right? I don't have an interest in that, but I do have an interest in doing things every day that are for good. And I don't know that I always do that. There are times where I've thought, I could have said this to this person, or I could have made this phone call before this person got sick, or I missed this person before they passed away. I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of us don't get to do that we wish we did. But if we can live our lives more interested on the inner self than the outer self, wouldn't that be great?
Absolutely.
It would be great. And how about if we start each day with just looking in the mirror and saying,
you look good.
Not even going to the looks, just about, I love you, because we greet the loved ones we love.
Right.
With
That's right. That's right.
How weird of a concept, like that would be so uncomfortable for so many people, but it is a great way to kind of, start your day with like that kind of beautiful energy, right?
When I apply my skincare regimen, I do that, Cheryl. I literally, I massage the lotion into my face, and I thank my skin and I thank my body. And it's something that I started maybe a year or so ago. And trust me, I have my insecurities. As you know, I'm 36 years old now. I'm starting to see lifelines on my face that I haven't seen before. But, you know,
Yeah.
body, I love you. And it's just that intention, and it does shift things.
Yeah, it does shift things.
Yeah.
And when you talk about us now celebrating us as women and supporting each other and stuff like that, it's just, I mean, you think about a social gathering, you're meeting new people. What is an unfortunate common thing to do is for women to talk about other women in the room with a comment. I don't wear that dress, like, you know, those kinds of things. So I think even with the understanding of moving past judgment and just really celebrating us as women and together, even if we do the famous line that we laugh at, Zippo the Lippo,
Right.
like even
I love that line.
right. But even in the idea, if people aren't at that place to get there, to stop, you know, having a comment, at least don't participate or try to hold back or just observe, like maybe I wanted to judge, I wanted to say a comment, but I'm not going to. Like all just shifting as we all just support each other. Like that would be so beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah.
We're all spiritual beings having this human experience, right? So we are maybe going to make mistakes like, oh my gosh, what was she thinking? That's too young for her, that dress, you know, like those awful things that kind of go in your head. But you don't have to say it, and you can be cognizant, like, what does this really matter? You know, they're having joy. Look at that, you know, that the color and how happy this person looks at it, right?
Good for her for owning
stuff, right? Instead
yes.
of always looking for the negative, because when you do that, there has to be something that you're feeling that you're making this comment about this person, right?
You, yeah. You know, two of my favorite things when Al and I went to Italy, all women wear bikinis, whatever their size, their age, their shape, whatever. It is so beautiful, humbling to be in that, because they own it, and that's the difference. And then when we're in Puerto Rico watching all the women dance in a way my body will I'll take it back, will hope to become like. The thing is, when people just allow themselves to own that energy and be in the beauty of who they are without judgment, wow, this whole other beautiful fun energy comes through.
Right.
We limit ourselves. We stop ourselves from becoming this unbelievable person.
So I would like to, as we close, I would like to challenge all of our listeners to just one time a day, whether it's when you wake up in the morning or before you go to sleep, look in the mirror and say something kind to yourself, and see if you can start there.
Right.
See if you can start there. Because I know we're all committed to that. And on the days where you can't do it, it's okay. Forgive yourself for that too, because we're still human. Like Linda said, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and every day is not going to be the same, and there are going to be challenges. So when you're feeling more challenged, even maybe instead of allowing that damaging internal dialogue to occur, maybe if you can even just stop it and say, stop, like think of someone you love, or think of a child, think of something that can help you shift.
That's right.
Because I definitely think as women, as we change, as we evolve, that ripples out, and we'll continue to help everything and everyone around us evolve.
It does. I was just going to say, you would never say anything to your children or others that you love the way that sometimes you say to yourself, right? So you need to be as kind to yourself as you are to others, but it begins there. It definitely begins with you being kind to yourself, and then you're able to, as you say, ripple to others.
Right. Someone had used the phrase "mothering me." I love that. Right?
It's great.
Because we just we turn that love onto ourselves, it is a altogether different ball game. Yeah, it's true. I love this conversation.
I know, this was great. This was great. And thank you all for listening and being with us. We have a great episode coming up, which is actually centered all around judgment. So you guys are not going to want to miss that one. Miss Cottrell will be back with us for that. And just know that we love you and we're sending you blessings and intentions of well-being. Continue to stay safe and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.